Nick Noly's journey as an actor wasn't something he initially recognized within himself as a unique talent. It was a discovery that unfolded over time, rather than a childhood dream fulfilled. From the very beginning, he possessed an undeniable presence, something raw and uncontained. His physicality and intensity created a dynamic energy that directors either found inspiring or difficult to control. When the chemistry between Noly and the filmmakers clicked, the results on screen were electrifying. When it didn't, the consequences were equally visible. This narrative isn't about a typical rise and fall or a star who burned out in the spotlight. Instead, it's about an actor whose craft evolved, fractured, and recalibrated over the years, and about the cost of maintaining such a fierce intensity both on and off the camera. Toward the latter part of his career, there was a particular role that peeled back the layers, revealing the inner turmoil behind the surface. Some viewers may recognize the film immediately, while others might not. But for many, that performance crystallizes everything that defined Nick Noly's life and work. Nick Noly's entry into Hollywood was unconventional. He didn't come through prestigious theater schools or elite acting programs. He wasn't carefully curated or groomed by industry insiders. Born in Omaha and raised between Arizona and California, he faced a difficult childhood. Dyslexia made school a challenge, and the rigid academic environment never seemed to fit him. Physically, he was built like an athlete, tall, robust, and naturally commanding. Football appeared to be a promising path for him, but injuries and restlessness prevented him from settling into any stable routine. Much like his early life experiences, football was something he moved through, rather than embraced fully. Acting wasn't an early ambition. Rather, it became the outlet where his restless energy finally found purpose after other dreams faded. What distinguished Noly wasn't conventional good looks or charm, it was his overwhelming physical presence. That unique quality burst into the public eye in 1976 with the television miniseries Rich Man, Poor Man. Instead of playing a polished hero, Noly portrayed a barely contained anger, a raw, working-class volatility that felt authentic rather than staged. This performance catapulted him to stardom, though it was not a comfortable place for him. He arrived on the scene fully formed, with every rough edge intact. In 1977, Noly took on a role that showcased a powerful contrast to his earlier work by starring opposite Jacqueline Smith in a film that capitalized on the era's fascination with ocean-set thrillers, a genre popularized just a few years earlier by Jaws. This film became a commercial success and further propelled Noly into mainstream recognition. His athleticism, charisma, and credibility as a physical lead made him stand out. It was also the first movie I saw him in as a child, and even then, there was something about him that was impossible to ignore. Through the late 1970s and early 1980s, Noly's intensity found directors who understood how to channel it effectively. He wasn't someone to be tamed, but aimed like a precision instrument. North Dallas 40 exemplifies this period perfectly. In it, Noly plays a professional football player worn down by the system, a role that felt organic because of his amateur football background. His movements and demeanor never seemed like an actor pretending. It was genuine. Then came 48 Hours, a pivotal moment that brought Noly together with director Walter Hill, known for his tightly controlled, purposeful filmmaking style. Hill's films, including The Warriors, The Driver, and Streets of Fire, were marked by precision and economy, nothing wasted. On set, Hill rarely over-directed actors, relying instead on tone, rhythm, and natural behavior. This minimalist approach was a perfect fit for Noly, who didn't need to be dialed down, but required a structured environment to harness his raw energy. Paired with Eddie Murphy, Noly's roughness and volatility added weight and depth to the film, creating a dynamic contrast that defined the movie's success. It's important to note that during this time, Noly wasn't confined to playing only severe, intense characters. Films like Down and Out in Beverly Hills revealed his comedic side, where he could play against type without losing credibility. This era represents the peak of Noly's career, the sweet spot when his volatility was not something to be smoothed over, but was instead the foundation of the film's energy. It was a time when directors knew exactly how to place him for maximum impact. He didn't need reshaping. He just needed the right context. Throughout much of the 1970s and early 1980s, even when Noly's characters were damaged or troubled, the roles seldom demanded prolonged emotional exposure. His toughness carried much of the narrative weight. However, by the late 1980s, there was a noticeable shift. Films like Who'll Stop the Rain, Under Fire, and Extreme Prejudice show Noly's characters still wielding force, but beginning to reveal emotional wariness beneath the surface. Moving into the early 1990s, the roles became more introspective. Movies such as The Prince of Tides required Noly to access vulnerability, to stay open, reflective, and emotionally exposed without the usual shield of physical dominance. At the same time, serious adult dramas like Cape Fear and Lorenzo's Oil demanded endurance rather than explosive impact. This was a critical juncture for an actor, a moment when one could either flourish or falter. Noly expanded his range and proved he could handle the emotional demands. Yet this expansion came at a price. Where his earlier performances allowed bursts of intensity controlled by structure, these newer roles required him to dwell inside emotional exposure for extended periods. From the outside, this shift looked like success, prestige projects, critical acclaim, awards, and public recognition. But what audiences couldn't see was the toll this emotional labor took on Noly himself. To sustain vulnerability as the core of his performances, he had to stay open and exposed longer than ever before. This kind of work demands a lot from the performer, and in Noly's case, the cost of this emotional openness only became clear later. This is the part of his story that often gets reduced to simplistic narratives about alcohol, drugs, and volatility. But such a framing misses the deeper reality. Noly never framed his struggles as mere indulgence or rebellion. When he spoke about them, he described coping mechanisms, ways to come down from emotional states he didn't know how to switch off naturally. By this stage of his career, vulnerability was the job. For some actors, the boundaries between work and personal life are clear. For others, those lines are blurred. Noly belonged to the latter group. The intensity that defined his craft didn't disappear off camera. According to him, once he tapped into those emotions and inhabited them on set for hours, stepping out of that mindset was not automatic. Those around Noly noticed this too. Directors and co-stars have recounted how he stayed in character long after filming stopped. Not for showmanship, but because he lacked a clean mental switch between role and real life. Alcohol became a tool to help him step out of that intense emotional space. Later, drugs entered the picture. Though Noly has been candid that substances didn't help, they only made things worse. This isn't an attempt to excuse problematic behavior. There were genuine professional and personal consequences. Relationships became strained, and trust was harder to maintain. However, understanding this context is crucial. Not everyone is equipped with the same tools or resilience for returning to baseline after intense emotional immersion. For Noly, the challenge wasn't generating intensity. It was learning to live with it outside of the work. As Noly moved through the late 1990s, his roles reflected this inner transformation. Affliction is a clear example. He plays a man burdened by years of resentment, violence, and inherited trauma. His performance is quietly devastating because it's restrained, showing emotional depth without overt dramatics. Around the same time, films like Afterglow echoed a similar shift toward subtlety. This transition is especially evident in The Thin Red Line, a project with significant context. Director Terrence Malick was making a comeback after 2 decades, and the film boasted an ensemble cast, including Sean Penn, George Clooney, John Travolta, Woody Harrelson, Jim Caviezel, Adrian Brody, and John Cusack. In such a star-studded environment, it would have been easy for Noly to be overshadowed. Instead, his performance stands out precisely because it isn't flashy or showy. His quiet presence carries emotional weight without demanding the spotlight, earning him an Academy Award nomination and critical acclaim. Entering the early 2000s and his 60s, Noly transitioned into a different phase of his career and life. The industry no longer relied on him to carry films as a leading man. Time itself became a part of his narrative. Years of hard living, including struggles with alcohol, left visible marks. His appearance grew rougher, more weathered, not as a judgment, but as a reflection of life's toll. This is evident in films like Hulk, where Noly's grizzled, unpredictable energy adds a layer of instability that the film leans into without embellishment. In ensemble films like Hotel Rwanda, he is used sparingly to inject tension or moral ambiguity rather than dominate scenes. This phase is not simply about seriousness or gravity. Noly had always understood the power of contrast, and by this point he was comfortable acknowledging his own public image. This self-awareness shines in Tropic Thunder, where he delivers a deliberately self-deprecating role. Playing it straight without irony, Noly proves to be absolutely hilarious, demonstrating his ability to embrace and subvert his tough guy persona. What makes Warrior such a powerful film is how little it attempts to soften or alter what Noly brings to the character. He plays Paddy Conlon, a recovering alcoholic trying to reconnect with his estranged sons. In one particularly gripping scene, he holds his son on the bed, ensuring he doesn't hurt himself, staying by his side until the episode passes. The scene is deeply uncomfortable because it feels closer to real life than scripted drama. It comes across as observed, almost accidental, as if the camera stumbled upon a private moment. There's a strong sense that this transcended performance. While this is speculative, many feel the scene represents catharsis, recognition, rather than resolution or healing. This authenticity is why Warrior resonates so deeply, and why Noly's Oscar nomination was well-deserved. Noly has spoken openly about the difficulty of leaving characters behind once he'd entered them. The intensity of his work didn't end when filming wrapped, it followed him home. Over the years, he was married multiple times and divorced multiple times, with family life marked by strain and complexity that's hard to fully understand from the outside. This is not unusual for actors who access such deep emotional reserves for their roles, but it remains an important part of Noly's story. Now in his 80s, Nick Noly continues to act, though more selectively. His career isn't a cautionary tale or a straightforward success story. Instead, it's a body of work defined by presence, risk-taking, and a willingness to explore uncomfortable emotional spaces, both for audiences and for himself. Ultimately, this is not a tale of a man at war with Hollywood or the entertainment industry. It's the story of a man at war with himself. That kind of intensity, when turned inward, would have destroyed most people long before reaching their 80s. It has destroyed others, but Noly endured. He survived the internal battles and kept moving forward. What rarely gets acknowledged is the immense resilience required to do so. That resilience might be the most extraordinary part of his journey. Thank you for watching this exploration of Nick Noly's life and career. If you appreciate this type of content, please leave a comment, like, or subscribe, or all three, as it truly makes a difference. As always, I look forward to sharing the next story with you all.